Welcome back to the deep dive. You know, if you feel like you're constantly running a marathon while also trying to solve some incredibly complex math problem
All day, every day.
all day, every day, right? Then you're definitely not alone. Today, we are tackling the one topic that really just defines modern life, stress. And we're not just going to give you, a few general tips. We are doing a deep dive into a really structured, actionable framework, 7 essential techniques for actually mastering stress.
Yeah, this is basically the survival guide for right now. We've gone through a huge amount of source material on stress management, and our mission today is to really distill it all. We want to get to the core why and the how behind what actually builds resilience.
So we're moving past just take a 5-minute break.
Way past that.
Yeah.
We're talking about the biological and the cognitive levers that you can actually pull to make a real difference.
And you really have to have a structured approach for this, don't you? Because the world we live in now, it's designed to be stressful.
It is.
The sources we looked at, they identified this really potent mix of things driving it. The fast pace of everything, this constant competition, financial pressures, and this one really hit me, our own incredibly high personal expectations.
That last one is the silent killer, isn't it?
Yeah.
The combination just puts us in this state of, well, of chronic vigilance. We're always on alert.
Right.
But we should make a key distinction here. I mean, not all stress is bad, right? The material talks about eustress.
Eustress. Okay,
It's that positive, motivating kind of stress. It's the thing that helps you focus before a big presentation or, helps you hit a really tight deadline. It's useful fuel.
It's performance fuel. But that fuel, if you just leave it sitting around or, I don't know, leave it on the stove too long, it becomes toxic.
Exactly. When it's excessive or when it's prolonged, that's when it crosses the line. It
Yeah.
goes from being a motivator to something that just debilitates you. It starts to spill over into your physical and your mental health.
And what does that spillover look like physically?
Oh, we're talking about chronic inflammation, major digestive issues, a compromised immune system, and then, of course, all the psychological stuff.
Anxiety, can't focus.
Anxiety, brain fog, mood disorders.
Yeah.
Yeah. So if the modern world is basically a stress factory, then learning how to manage it isn't a luxury. It's essential. It's about protecting your well-being.
So we're building a better shock absorber.
We're giving you the blueprints for it, yeah.
So let's look at those blueprints. This deep dive is broken into 3 parts. First, we'll cover the immediate physical tools you can use. Then we'll look at external changes, how you manage your time and your relationships.
And finally, the big one, the inner game, the mindset shifts that really govern how you respond to all of it.
And you need all 3.
You need all 3 working together. And we're going to start where you have the most immediate control, which is your own body.
All right, part 1. This is all about the physiology of stress and how we can build these foundational habits for long-term resilience. And we start with technique 1, hitting the calm button.
The emergency brake.
Exactly, using deep breathing and other relaxation techniques. The material presents this as like the fastest and most accessible tool you have.
And that speed, that simplicity, that's what makes it so powerful. Deep breathing exercises are highlighted because they kind of bypass all the mental chatter and go straight to your nervous system.
Okay, so I think we all have that instinct, right? When you're overwhelmed, someone says, just take a deep breath. But let's get into the mechanics of it. What is actually happening when you feel that surge of panic and you take a slow, deep breath? How does that work?
It's pure biology. It's neurology, really.
Yeah.
So that acute stress you feel, that's your sympathetic nervous system kicking into high gear.
The gas pedal.
The gas pedal, exactly.
Yeah.
It's your fight or flight response. You get a surge of adrenaline, your heart rate shoots up, your muscles get tense, your body is physically preparing to, fight a predator or run away.
Which is great if a bear walks into the room,
Right.
but not so helpful when you're just opening a scary email.
Not at all. And deep breathing is the direct countermeasure to that. When you take a slow, deliberate breath in, and this is the important part, a long, slow breath out, you are sending a direct signal of safety to your brain.
And how does that signal travel?
It travels through something called the vagus nerve. The vagus nerve is it's the superhighway of your parasympathetic nervous system.
And that's the brake pedal.
That is the rest and digest system, the brake. So by controlling your breath, you are literally physically stimulating that nerve and telling your body to stand down.
You're forcing the switch from alarm to calm.
You're forcing it. Your body physiologically cannot maintain a full-blown panic attack when your breathing is slow and controlled. It just can't. The heart rate has to come down, the muscles have to start to relax, and the release of stress hormones like cortisol starts to taper off.
And that's the immediate payoff you were talking about.
It's instant. You're short-circuiting that whole stress loop.
So for anyone listening who wants to try this, like right now, what are some of the specific techniques the sources mentioned that are really effective?
Two really stand out. The first one is called box breathing, or sometimes four-square breathing.
Okay.
It's super simple. You breathe in for a count of 4, you hold your breath for 4, you breathe out for 4, and then you hold with empty lungs for 4. 1, 2, 3, 4.
The rhythm is the key.
Rhythm is everything. It gives your brain something structured and meditative to focus on. The second one is the 4-7-8 technique.
4-7-8.
Yeah, this one was popularized by Dr. Andrew Weil.
You breathe in quietly through your nose for 4 counts. You hold it for a full 7 counts. And then you exhale completely through your mouth, making a whoosh sound for 8 counts.
Wow, so that exhale is twice as long as the inhale. That seems really important, based on what you said about the vagus nerve.
It's the most important part. The longer the out-breath, the stronger the signal you're sending to that parasympathetic system to just calm down. These aren't just, fluffy relaxation tips. They're measurable biofeedback tools. And the sources didn't just stop at breathing. They mention other sustained practices like meditation, yoga, and something called progressive muscle relaxation, or PMR. This one sounds a little counterintuitive. You're saying I should tense my muscles up to relax.
It sounds strange, right? But it's a brilliant technique. See, when we're stressed, we often carry this chronic, low-level tension in our bodies. We clench our jaw, our shoulders are up by our ears.
And we don't even notice we're doing it.
Exactly. We stop noticing. So PMR has you systematically go through your body, tensing a specific muscle group, like your hand as tight as you can for about 5 seconds, and then you just let it go completely.
And the point of that is?
You're creating this extreme contrast.
Yeah.
You're actively teaching your body the difference between what tension feels like and what true deep relaxation feels like. You're retraining your physical awareness. When you consciously focus on that feeling of release, you interrupt the feedback loop that keeps those muscles tight all day long.
So it's like mindfulness, but for your body.
That's a perfect way to put it.
Okay, so technique 1 is our immediate fire extinguisher, but you said we also need fireproofing. And that brings us to technique 2. Building that long-term resilience by maintaining a healthy lifestyle.
Right. If breathing is the switch, then your lifestyle habits. That's the entire foundation. It determines your overall stress threshold. And this technique is built on 3 really essential pillars.
The first pillar is exercise. Now, we all hear this, exercise reduces stress, but I want the deep dive answer. Why? What is actually happening with our body chemistry?
Okay, so it all comes down to chemical balance. When you're stressed, your body is flooded with a hormone called cortisol.
The stress hormone.
The main one, yeah. And chronically high cortisol is. It's just destructive.
Yeah.
It's inflammatory, it damages tissue, and it signals your body to store fat, especially around your abdomen, because your body thinks it's in a long-term survival situation.
And exercise is the antidote to that.
It's a powerful one. Regular physical activity stimulates the production of endorphins.
Which are the body's natural feel-good chemicals.
Exactly. They're natural painkillers and mood elevators. So exercise does 2 things at once. First, it helps your body metabolize and clear out all that excess cortisol. You're literally burning off the anxious energy. And second, it replaces those bad chemicals with good ones.
A double benefit.
A huge double benefit. And not just that, but the rhythmic nature of a lot of exercise, like running or swimming, can act as a kind of moving meditation. It helps your brain process everything.
The sources really emphasized regular activity, didn't they? It's not about being a weekend warrior.
Consistency is everything. You're trying to set a new chemical baseline for your body. The ideal mix seems to be some cardiovascular work to clear those hormones and boost your mood, and also some strength training, which has been shown to boost self-efficacy and confidence.
Okay, that makes sense. Moving on to the second pillar, diet. The material says a nutritious diet is critical for supporting brain function. How does what's on my plate affect my anxiety level?
Well, being stressed is incredibly draining for your brain. It's a high-energy state. Your brain needs a steady supply of fuel and very specific nutrients to produce the neurotransmitters that keep your mood stable.
Like serotonin and dopamine.
Exactly. We're living on, processed foods, tons of sugar, refined carbs. And we get these huge blood sugar spikes and then these awful crashes.
That feels like anxiety.
It mimics the internal chaos of a stress response. It makes you irritable and anxious. So what you eat can either calm your system or pour gasoline on the fire.
So what kind of food should we be focusing on for a sort of stress-reducing diet?
You need the raw materials for a stable mind. So things like omega-3 fatty acids, you find those in fish, walnuts, flaxseed. They're vital for your brain cells, and they reduce inflammation. B vitamins are also crucial. They help create those mood-regulating neurotransmitters and complex carbs.
Like whole grains, vegetables.
Right. They give you a steady release of energy instead of a spike and crash. They also help an amino acid called tryptophan get into the brain, which is a precursor to serotonin. Oh, and anything that supports a healthy gut, because a huge amount of your serotonin is actually made in your gut.
The gut-brain axis.
The gut-brain axis. It's all connected. You can't regulate your emotions if your brain is starving or riding a blood sugar roller coaster.
It sounds like managing your mood really starts in the kitchen.
It plays a massive role, for sure.
Okay, and that brings us to the third, and I think for many people the most difficult pillar, sleep. The sources were very clear on this, 7 to 8 hours a night. Not a suggestion, but a requirement. Why is that specific amount so important?
Because sleep is when your brain does its janitorial work. It's when it recovers and processes the emotional weight of the day.
So it's not just physical rest.
Not at all. During deep sleep cycles, especially REM sleep, your brain is literally clearing out metabolic waste products that build up when you're awake. And crucially, it's consolidating emotional memories. It's filing things away properly.
And if you don't get enough sleep...
If you're sleep deprived, the part of your brain right behind your forehead, the prefrontal cortex, it gets severely impaired.
And that's the part that's in charge of rational thought and emotional control.
The CEO of your brain. So without enough sleep, you lose your ability to think clearly when you're faced with a minor stressor. Your emotional center, the amygdala, becomes hyperreactive. A small problem suddenly feels like a catastrophe.
So a lack of sleep actually is a physical stressor in itself.
A huge one. It just lowers your tolerance for everything else.
Given how critical it is, what were some of the key tips from the sources on, sleep hygiene? How do we make sure those 7 to 8 hours are actually good restorative hours?
It really boils down to routine and environment.
Yeah.
For routine, it means a consistent bedtime and wake-up time. Yes, even on the weekends. It helps stabilize your body's internal clock.
And environment.
Keep your bedroom cool, dark, and quiet. The ideal temperature is actually around 65 degrees Fahrenheit, or about 18 Celsius. And then there's boundary setting. No screens for at least an hour before bed. No work. No stressful conversations. You have to give your brain a runway to land for the night.
That's a good way to put it. Okay, before we move on from this physical foundation, we have to talk about the things that undermine all this good work. The hidden stressors, the vices.
The self-sabotage section.
Yes.
This is the big blind spot for a lot of people. They try to cope with stress using things that actually make the stress and anxiety much, much worse.
So let's start with the most common one, caffeine. I mean, who doesn't use a few cups of coffee to power through a tough deadline? How does that backfire?
It backfires because caffeine is a central nervous system stimulant. In high doses, it basically mimics the chemical signature of a stress response. It raises your heart rate, it spikes your cortisol, it tenses your muscles. It literally tricks your body into a low-grade state of fight or flight.
So while you feel more alert, you're also making yourself more anxious.
Exactly. You're raising your baseline anxiety level, which makes you much more jumpy and less resilient when a real stressor comes along.
And what about alcohol? I mean, so many people use a drink to wind down.
It's a depressant, so it feels like it's working at first. But what happens is, as that sedative effect wears off, your nervous system has a rebound effect. It overcorrects and becomes hyperactive to compensate.
Which leads to that 3 a.m. wake-up call full of anxiety.
Precisely. And it destroys your sleep quality. So you get into this awful cycle. You drink to numb the stress, you sleep poorly and feel more stress the next day, so you drink again. It's a trap. True resilience comes from sustainable habits, not temporary fixes.
Okay, so we've established that vital physical baseline. Now we shift gears in part 2 and look outward. We're talking about managing the external demands of life. This brings us to technique 3. Defeating the pileup through effective time management.
And the sources identified poor time management as, just a massive source of stress for people. The anxiety often doesn't even come from the task itself. It comes from the feeling of being overwhelmed.
Right. It's that sense that things are just accumulating faster than you can possibly deal with them. It's a feeling of losing control.
It's the cognitive load. Your brain is trying to juggle this huge mental inventory of things you have to do, and that constant calculation is exhausting before you've even started.
So what's the action plan? The sources broke it down into 3 core strategies.
Right. The first one is breaking large tasks into smaller parts. This is all about fighting procrastination.
The kind of procrastination that comes from just being paralyzed by how big a project feels.
Exactly. You look at this huge, vague goal, and your brain just goes into avoidance mode. It feels impossible. But if you systematically break it down into a checklist of small, clear, achievable steps,
Then you lower the barrier to starting.
you lower the activation energy, yeah. And each little step you check off becomes a mini-win. You get a little dopamine hit, which reinforces the behavior and builds momentum.
Okay, so that's strategy 1. Strategy 2 is prioritizing important work. This feels crucial. It's about deciding what really matters instead of just reacting to whatever is yelling the loudest.
This is the antidote to feeling reactive all the time. There's a really useful framework for this called the Eisenhower matrix.
Urgent versus important.
Exactly. It divides your tasks into 4 boxes: urgent and important. Important but not urgent. Urgent but not important. And then neither. The key to reducing stress is to spend as much time as possible in that important but not urgent box.
Because that's the planning, the preparation, the proactive work.
It's the work that prevents future fires. If you only live in the urgent and important box, you are constantly in crisis mode, just putting out fires. And that is an incredibly stressful way to live.
So prioritization is really about investing time now to reduce stress later.
100%. It means making time for the gym or for planning your week, even when that urgent email feels more pressing.
And the third strategy is setting realistic goals. This seems to push back against those high personal expectations we talked about at the beginning.
It's a direct challenge to that. Setting realistic goals is basically a form of structured self-compassion. If you're constantly setting yourself up with impossible standards, you're guaranteeing failure. And that just fuels a cycle of stress, self-criticism, and burnout.
So it's about breaking that all or nothing thinking.
It is. It's about acknowledging that you're human, that you have limits, and that progress is better than perfection.
Now, the sources mentioned the tools for this: planners, calendars, to-do lists. But how can we use those tools to specifically fight that internal feeling of stress?
The key is that they have to become a trusted external brain. You have to offload all of that cognitive burden onto the system. So you're not using your mental energy just remembering what you have to do.
You're freeing up brain space.
You're freeing up so much mental RAM. Frameworks like the Pomodoro technique are great for this too.
That's the 25 minutes on, 5 minutes off method.
Right. It forces you to break down your work into manageable chunks, and it builds in rest, which reduces that feeling of pressure. By externalizing your entire plan onto a system you trust, you dramatically lower your cognitive fatigue. And that is a huge stress stabilizer.
So the minute you feel that pile-up anxiety, the answer is to get it out of your head and onto paper or a screen.
Get it out and break it down, yes.
Okay, so we've managed our tasks. Now we move on to managing our relationships with technique 4. Connecting the dots by building social support and communication.
This is so important. Stress loves isolation. It grows in the dark. The sources were very clear that simply talking to people, friends, family, a therapist, is an incredibly powerful way to relieve stress.
It's about getting it out.
It's about moving those churning, difficult emotions from inside your head, where they feel overwhelming, to outside, where they can be looked at and managed.
And the material pointed to 2 main benefits of doing this.
Right. The first one is getting essential emotional support. This is just the feeling of being seen and heard. When someone listens without judgment and validates what you're feeling, it significantly reduces how threatening the problem feels.
It makes you feel less alone with it.
Which is huge. It literally calms your nervous system.
And the second benefit, which can often be even more powerful, is getting new perspectives on the problem.
When you're stuck in a stress cycle, you get tunnel vision. Your thinking narrows. You're so emotionally invested that you can't see the situation clearly.
You magnify all the negatives.
You magnify the obstacles, and you totally miss potential solutions. Bringing in an outside perspective, a friend, a partner, can completely reframe the problem. They might see an angle you missed or gently point out where your fear is kind of running the show.
It breaks you out of that negative echo chamber in your own head.
It does. It can turn what feels like an internal, personal failing into an external, solvable challenge. And that shift is everything.
So how do we actively build this support system, especially when the instinct for many people when they're stressed is to withdraw and hide?
It has to be intentional. This is an active choice, not a passive hope. It means scheduling social time, dedicating real quality time to the people you care about. It might mean joining a support group if you're dealing with something specific. You have to nurture these relationships so the safety net is there when you need it.
Because the end result is that you feel less isolated and less tense. We are, at the end of the day, social creatures.
We are biologically wired to handle threats better when we're in a group. Facing stress together always makes the burden feel lighter.
Okay, so we've shored up the body's defenses and we've organized the external world. Now we get to the final and maybe the toughest part of the battle, the inner game. This is all about cognitive control.
This is where the work really happens.
We kick it off with Technique 5, rewiring the brain by developing positive thinking. This is about tackling those deep, automatic thought patterns that just sabotage us.
Yeah, the source material was really clear on this. Negative thinking patterns don't just happen alongside stress. They actively intensify it. They're an amplifier.
They take a small problem and turn it into a catastrophe.
It's that catastrophic spiral, yeah. A missed deadline doesn't just stay a missed deadline. In your head, it instantly becomes, I'm going to get fired, I'll lose my house, and that just pours fuel on the physiological stress fire.
So our brains can literally invent these negative futures that are totally out of proportion.
And our bodies react as if they're happening right now. So cultivating a healthier mindset isn't about just being cheerful. It's the intentional act of disrupting that downward spiral.
And this is done through 3 specific mental practices. The first one is practicing gratitude. Now, this can sometimes sound a little cliche. What's the real function of it?
Functionally, gratitude is a deliberate shift in your attention. Stress and anxiety are rooted in scarcity and threat. They make you focus on what you don't have or what could go wrong. Practicing gratitude forces your brain to scan for the opposite. It forces you to acknowledge what you do have, your strengths, your resources, the positive things in your life. It's an active fight against that fear-based worldview.
So you're changing your brain's default filter.
Exactly. The second practice is focusing on strengths. This is about looking inward for your resources.
So when a stressful situation hits, instead of immediately thinking about all the ways you might fail.
Right, which is the default for many of us. Instead, you deliberately focus on what you can do. What skills do you have? What past challenges have you overcome? You're building up your sense of competence and self-efficacy. You're sending yourself the message, I can handle this.
And the third practice, accepting imperfections. This seems aimed squarely at perfectionism.
It is. So much of our stress comes from the gap between our messy reality and some idealized, perfect version of how things should be.
And that gap is exhausting.
It's incredibly draining. Accepting imperfection means you give yourself permission to be human. It means mistakes are data, not a judgment on your character.
Yeah.
And that frees up so much energy that was being wasted on self-criticism and fear.
Now we have to address the big question here. When we talk about positive thinking, a lot of people immediately think of toxic positivity.
Right, the just be happy, ignore your problems idea.
Exactly. How does this constructive approach differ from just, dangerous avoidance?
That's the most important nuance of this entire technique. This is absolutely not about ignoring problems or pretending you don't feel bad. The goal is to change how you interpret and respond to the problem.
So positive thinking doesn't make the problem disappear.
Not at all. It just helps you approach it with confidence and a problem-solving mindset instead of with fear and paralysis. It's the difference between saying, this failed, so I'm a failure, and saying, okay, this approach failed. What did I learn, and what's the next logical step? It keeps you in control.
It keeps your agency.
Exactly.
That mindset shift is a great lead-in to Technique 6, the necessary pause. This is about actively engaging in enjoyable activities.
And we have to reframe how we think about this. In our culture, which is so obsessed with productivity, hobbies and leisure are often seen as a luxury, a waste of time.
Something you do only if you've finished all your work.
Which is never. The sources insist that these activities are a mandatory structural part of stress management. We need scheduled time for non-productive restoration.
The sources gave a bunch of examples: reading, music, art, sports, gardening, spending time in nature. What makes these things so effective?
Well, they do a couple of things. Psychologically, they help you get into a flow state.
Where you're just completely absorbed in what you're doing.
Totally absorbed. And when that happens, you're diverting your brain's attention away from your stressors. The parts of your brain that were stuck in that worry loop are now busy with something else. It gives those circuits a much-needed break,
And I imagine there's a physiological benefit too.
a huge one. When you're engaged in something that brings you joy, your body's chemistry changes. It reduces the amount of cortisol circulating in your system. Your parasympathetic rest and digest system takes over. It's active healing, not just, mindlessly scrolling on your phone.
But what about when you're so stressed and overwhelmed that the idea of even starting a hobby feels like too much work? How do you get over that hump?
That's where you have to lean on the other techniques like time management. You have to schedule your leisure time. Put it in your calendar like it's a doctor's appointment you can't miss.
And start small.
Start really small. If an hour in the garden feels impossible, commit to just watering one plant for 5 minutes. The key is to build a habit, to just start, and let the activity itself do the work. You'll quickly find that those 5 minutes pay for themselves in reduced tension.
Okay, that brings us to our final technique, number 7. And this one is maybe the most uniquely modern challenge of all, drawing the line by limiting digital overload.
This is a critical piece of the puzzle for life in the 21st century. We are just constantly bombarded. Social media, emails, news alerts, notifications. This perpetual connection has dramatically increased our baseline level of stress.
It's like death by a thousand pings, isn't it? Your brain is never allowed to fully be at rest. You're always in this state of partial attention, waiting for the next thing.
That's it. It's a state of chronic, low-level vigilance, and it is exhausting. Your
Yeah.
brain feels like it's constantly on call, and the sheer volume of information, a lot of it negative or demanding, is just too much.
So to fight this, the sources offered some very specific, practical solutions for setting digital boundaries.
Yeah, the first one is having designated screen-free hours.
This one requires some serious discipline.
It does. But it creates this essential space for your brain to actually recover. This could be as simple as no work emails on your phone after 6 p.m., or making the dinner table a completely phone-free zone. It's about reclaiming parts of your day and your life.
And the second solution ties all the way back to technique 2, to sleep. Reducing online time, especially right before bed.
This is a non-negotiable for good sleep. We know that the blue light from screens messes with your melatonin production, the hormone that helps you fall asleep, but it's also about the content. If the last thing you do before you close your eyes is read a stressful work email or scroll through an infuriating social media feed, you're firing up all the emotional centers of your brain right when they need to be powering down.
So if you want those 8 hours of sleep, you have to protect the hour leading up to it.
You absolutely have to. The payoff for doing this, for having a digital detox, is huge. You'll have better focus, your sleep quality will skyrocket, and your overall mental health will improve. You regain control over your internal state by controlling the information you let in.
Wow, this has been an incredibly thorough breakdown. We started by just acknowledging that, yes, stress is a baked-in feature of modern life, but the range of these 7 techniques really shows that it is absolutely controllable.
It is. We've really covered the whole spectrum, haven't we? From, immediate physical tools like your breath and your sleep, all the way to organizing your external world with time management and social support. And then finishing with that cognitive armor.
Positive thinking, leisure, and those crucial digital walls.
It has to be a multi-layered defense. There's no single magic bullet.
And I think the big takeaway is that stress management isn't about trying to create a life with no problems. I mean, that's impossible.
That's a fantasy. The real goal, and all the sources agree on this, is developing the strength and the resilience to handle those problems effectively when they do show up.
Wow.
It's about being capable, not about being shielded from reality.
It's about building your capacity.
It's about building your capacity and your sense of agency.
So for you listening, the next step is to take this whole toolkit and do a little self-diagnosis. Figure out what your personal stress triggers are. Is it more about internal mental chaos for you? Or is it external disorganization? Or maybe it's just physical burnout?
Yeah, look at these 7 techniques and ask yourself, which one of these is the most direct antidote to the pain point I'm feeling right now? Do you just need the immediate calm from technique 1, or do you need to go back and rebuild the foundation with technique 2?
And as we close out, we want to leave you with one final thought to connect all of this together.
We've talked about how digital boundaries, that's technique 7, protect your recovery time. And we've talked about how exercise technique 2 gives you that crucial chemical lift.
So the question to think about is this. How might achieving one small intentional win tonight, like putting your phone away an hour before bed. How might that single act of discipline unlock the mental space and the energy you need to take a positive step for your physical health tomorrow?
Find that first domino. Find that link for yourself and just start there.
Find your starting point. Thank you for joining us for this deep dive.
We'll see you next time.